Coming up, I'll let you know what's been happening with the tropical disturbance in the southwest Caribbean and the areas of flooding rains and gusty winds I expect over the next couple of days. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Welcome everyone. Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather, and it's fantastic to see you on a Tuesday. Hope you're doing well. Coming up in this video, I've got all the newest information on our tropical disturbance trying to develop here in the southwest Caribbean. We'll look at all the newest model data, kind of talk about how this is going to try and get going as we move through the week. We've had some very active weather. We've had some flooding rains and some really gusty winds in portions of the greater Antilles for today. We'll highlight that and then get into the forecast for the rest of the week ahead. As always, I'd love to hear from you guys as we move across the map. You see your area. Let me know in the comments section below that you live there and what the weather has been like. We'll start off with a broad perspective. Our surface analysis still have this weak frontal boundary kind of draped over portions of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and Haiti and the Dominican Republic, still promoting extremely heavy and flooding rains and some really gusty winds. You get north of that boundary, the air dries out for the Turks and the Caicos and especially into the Bahamas, but now gale force winds are beginning to pick up, and it's only going to get worse in those areas through the rest of the week. Tropical wave moving through the eastern Caribbean right now. We'll talk about how this has been impacting the lesser Antilles for today. Another tropical wave in the western Caribbean. That's just more moisture for this area trying to develop to feed into, and we'll break that down for you. And there's another tropical wave in the western Atlantic, and we'll talk about as that moves into the eastern Caribbean as we get closer to the weekend, the impacts for rain that will bring to those areas. Let's start off with a broad perspective here. The enhanced satellite imagery, the live lightning data at Meteo Mundo, and all those numbers that you see are wind gusts in miles an hour. And it has been a day for portions of Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. As a matter of fact, right now we actually have a flash flood warning for the southwest sides of Puerto Rico, including the Yauco areas. This part of Puerto Rico has already seen 2 to 4 inches of rain, with an additional 1 to 3 inches likely to fall the remainder of this Tuesday. So flooding, we're talking about, again, maybe 4 to 7 inches in a couple of areas there. It's 100 to 175 millimeters. It's been a very windy, very wet day across the entire island. What do you say we take a live look to the radar here out of Puerto Rico? So let me bring that up real quick and just drop off the satellite data. It'll be a little bit easier to see. Let's get that out of the way. You can clearly see that the heaviest rainfall is now working its way off towards the south. Ponce had a 40-mile-an-hour wind gust there. So this is wind-driven heavy rainfall that's basically moving from north to south. It's just kind of slowly drifting off towards the south. There's not been a lot of movement with this. That's why we've had those pockets of really heavy rain. Even Aguadilla has had a 30-mile-an-hour wind, and they haven't had a lot of rain in the last couple of hours. But this is just a really wet forecast with that stationary boundary in play and the rich tropical moisture on the south side of it, which is going to be inundating the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and portions of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, at least through portions of tomorrow as well. Passing showers on the heavier side will move through St. Croix as well towards Christiansted. We'll get some scattered showers here up towards the Culebra, Vieques areas. And again, anytime you get some of this rain, it's going to be quite gusty. If you live in these areas, let me know in the comments section below what you've been seeing, especially if you've been prone to any flash flooding in these areas. St. Thomas, St. John, Yost Van Dyke, Road Town, Tortola, again, pockets of heavy rain just situated off of your northern coastline, but some of this will just continue to drift over the islands if you're not getting rain right now, is what I'm trying to say. There's still a really high likelihood you get more later on this Tuesday, even overnight, and then throughout portions of Wednesday as well. We're not said and done anytime soon with that access of very heavy moisture. If I go back over to the satellite imagery again, you can clearly see that boundary kind of cutting here from west to east, back over to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. I'm just going to drop off this development area right now. Of course, we'll talk a lot more about the tropics coming up, promise you here. But in the short term, again, look at all of the rain, showers and storms for portions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic at the hour, Santo Domingo, Samana, La Romana, on over towards Bani, Santiago de los Caballeros as well. At least some heavier, thicker cloud coverage to go along with the rain and the lightning. Still scattered in nature, but this is some really prolific rainfall. And once again, flash flooding Landslides, mudslides are not out of the question here. Scattered rain through portions of Haiti as well. Let's go back over to Jamaica. This is an area that has really seen some heavy rainfall over the past day or two. It's quieted down a little bit here late on this Tuesday. Not seeing as much rain across the island right now, but many of you have let me know in the comment section below that you have gotten some really healthy rain through portions of late Sunday, most of Monday, and even into early on this Tuesday. Right now, late on this Tuesday, again, we had some rain and storms on the northern coastline from Ocho Rios to Port Maria to Port Antonio. Those have kind of just frittered away for the time being, but additional showers and storms are likely to refire. Earlier in the day, Charline Morse sent me this photo from the western side of the island. We're in Westmoreland, Jamaica, and you can just see those thick, dark clouds, and that was a very common sight across Jamaica all day yesterday and early on this Tuesday. Moisture-laden air, pockets of really heavy rainfall. Still have to watch out for the flood potential throughout Jamaica. I appreciate Charline sending in that photo to help tell the story there. So we'll move back over off towards our east. Again, we talked about the showers and storms in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Here's how it's been playing out through the Lesser Antilles for today. Let me bring back on our wind gusts. And again, it's been a little bit quieter here. The axis of heaviest moisture has been a little bit farther off towards the west and to the north. You get towards Anguilla, they could certainly still see some passing showers and some heavier rain from time to time. You'll notice that when I zoom in just a little bit, that the clouds are moving in two different directions. That's that kind of confluence of the winds here along that frontal boundary, all right? It's weak, but it's enough to promote a lot of lift in the atmosphere. So when we have rich tropical moisture in play like we do, the rain falls heavy and it falls quite often and steady. Passing showers, Anguilla, St. Bart, St. Martin, Saba, St. Eustatius, on over towards St. Kitts and Nevis as well, Barbuda, Antigua included in that. Montserrat, Guadalupe, Dominica, isolated showers. There's a lightning strike here or there. It's not going to be very concentrated in the Lesser Antilles. Martinique had a 25-mile-an-hour wind gust, and you can see the pockets of thicker clouds and some heavier rain. Earlier today, southwest sides of Barbados, we had some heavier rainfall. Same thing for portions of western St. Lucia and scattered across St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines as well. Go back over to the enhanced satellite imagery. It's really interesting to see that actually some of the clouds are trying to move west to east, back down towards Trinidad and Tobago right now. Things are a little bit quieter here in the Windward Islands. As far as the water vapor imagery, it'll just show you that the air here is just slightly drier a bit, right? But on the doorstep, we have this next tropical wave, and you can see all the moisture associated with that, and it will be building into the Windward Islands here as we get into late Wednesday and especially on Thursday. Pretty quiet in the ABC Islands for today as well. Let's go on over to our friends in Belize, the Yucatan, and Central America. Again, still moisture-laden air, so scattered showers and storms continue to develop at the hour here from Cancun to Cozumel, back down towards Tulum, Chechemal as well. Showers and storms in a scattered variety over the Cayman Islands. And again, this is going to be the forecast. This moisture-laden air in the Western Caribbean will promote pockets of heavy rain and storms. Some of it will be fairly isolated in nature, but other areas will continue to see a tremendous amount of rain and the high potential there. It has been quieter today overall for Belize and Guatemala and portions of northern Honduras. That's good news because they've had a lot of rain lately there, but you can already see what's trying to move into the Caribbean coastline of Honduras and then get to the northern coastline. And this is, of course, where we could ultimately see this disturbance develop. Now, it's still just a 40% chance for the National Hurricane Center. It hasn't gotten any more organized over the past 24 hours. But coming up here in just a minute, we're going to deep dive into what's going to be happening with this for the week ahead. Before we get into that, let's talk about what's been happening in the Bahamas for today. The air is much drier here, but the winds, they're howling across the region right now, and those gale force conditions are beginning to pick up. First thing we've really seen is the wave heights just go upwards. Right now, they're in that 5 to 8 up to 10 foot range. But by late tomorrow and into Thursday, the forecast for the Atlantic exposed waters of the entire Bahamas and the Turks of the Caicos will be to see wave heights of 10 to 15 feet. Those are the yellows and oranges that you see on this map to go along with gale force winds, sustained 25 to 30 knots, and there will be some gusts of up to 40 knots. So there is a near gale force watch that is currently in effect right now for the entire islands chain, okay? It's going to be very rough boating. It's going to be something where the beachgoers don't want to get in the water, and obviously the boaters are going to want to stay in port, and that's coming from the Bahamas Department of Meteorology. So gale watch in effect right now, Bahamas and Turks and the Caicos. Again, sustained winds 25 to 30, but gusts of 40 knots. That's well over 40 mile-an-hour winds through at least Thursday or Friday, okay? Seas will continue to build, reaching 10 to 15 feet by tomorrow, Wednesday, and then stay that high through at least Thursday, potentially falling a bit on Friday, but that's still to be determined. So this is several days of very high impacts from these winds. Please take caution. Boaters are urged to remain in port. Beachgoers are urged to stay out of the water. If you're driving along coastal highways, please be very cautious of some of the overspray and some of the potential low-lying flooding that could occur, especially during high tide cycles. My friends in the Bahamas, you live here. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys have been seeing, but obviously, well outside of any tropical development areas, they are going to get some active weather the rest of the week. As we get into the tropics forecast, appreciate you guys taking a quick second, small payback. Just like this video for me, click that thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to Meteo Mundo, you found your home for Caribbean weather. We have a great community. Thank you for joining it here by clicking that subscribe button, sharing this with your family and friends. And again, appreciate ways to support us here at the channel. The memberships, the super thanks. You can also find other ways in the video description below this as well. Okay, now we're going to get into Mr. Orange here. 40% chance of development from the National Hurricane Center. There's not a lot of things that I'm going to be talking about in this video that I'm much more confident in than what I was yesterday. Sometimes this is how this plays out. When we look at the models again today, we are still going to see a pretty darn big spread in the ultimate solutions from the models that we look at. So we still have to be very vigilant and pay attention. We still continue to see the Central American gyre producing that spin. We obviously can see a big concentration of showers and storms. We've really yet to get a low-level center to develop, and that was forecast to not happen as of yet as well. But ultimately here, with the wind shear quite low and sea surface temperatures warm, we more than likely will. Still highly confident that we're going to get a tropical system to develop in this part of the Caribbean as it slowly drifts either north or northeast to begin, but ultimately, and I'll show you the models coming up, that may not be how it ultimately tracks overall. Again, regardless of tropical development, very heavy rain, especially from Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. The other situation, and I mentioned this yesterday, is this axis, this frontal boundary that's stalled out, is still going to promote very heavy rain over Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And this is kind of the first punch to get flooding conditions like we've already seen in the southwest side of Puerto Rico. If the tropical system were to track this way, that's the second punch to aid in even more heavy rains and flooding conditions. Even outside of this potential tropical development, I am concerned about flooding conditions for Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Virgin Islands the rest of the week, just simply based off of that boundary sitting here over the next couple of days and the rain that it's already brought to some of these areas. Southeast Cuba could also be played into that as well. But let's get into the models. We'll start off with the GFS deterministic. We'll look at the reflectivity first, then we'll look at the winds, then we'll look at the GFS ensembles, then we'll look at the European ensembles as well. Just kind of break down the two major global models. Again, we still don't have an invest area, so the tropical models still aren't running on this. We don't have the spaghetti plots as of yet. We might get those as early as Thursday. It might be Friday as well. Certainly, it doesn't look like this system is in any big hurry to try and wrap up and develop. That also means that some of the heavier rain on the south side of this, especially for Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama, could be sitting there for days as well. And that's another area that could potentially see some significant flooding because this system doesn't want to move much. Okay, so when we look at this here over the next couple days, here is Thursday, the 31st, and into Friday, November the 1st. you don't see anything extremely wrapped up, right? First of all of this is still that frontal boundary elongated west to east. Look at some of the heavier rain it could bring into the areas that I've already mentioned. So that, again, is concern number one. On the GFS deterministic, first of all, this is going to be a very east outlier, okay? It is still trying to bring this closer to the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Now, as we get into here, this would be the early portions of next Monday morning, so about 6 days out. You don't see a big wrapped up center of circulation. I'm going to take off the development area here because we don't need to see that. The main reason why is the center of this storm is right over Hispaniola, and that's an extremely mountainous island. We talked about it's a big tropical storm killer, and so if this thing is still trying to develop and it's trying to do so over Hispaniola, it may never really get its act together. But that's the solution as of the last run of the GFS. So unlike yesterday's run, where it wrapped up the storm south of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, it's still ultimately trying to develop it over Hispaniola, which would obviously cut down the opportunity that we would actually get a stronger storm. It's a lot more sloppy on the GFS through early next week, but the rain could still be extremely significant. I want to again reiterate, this far east and weaker solution is an outlier. Even on the GFS ensembles, it's an outlier. Yes, the deterministic is the main model run of the GFS, but again, some of the initial conditions are estimated. That's why we have those ensemble members to help us out. It gives us different solutions, and the European model is much stronger as well. But ultimately, again, there is not a high degree of certainty right now as to how this is going to evolve. I love the storms that are much easier to talk about, right? To see how they're going to evolve and to be very clear about that in the 3, 4, 5, 6 day time frame. This system just does not appear to be that way. All right. The models have really yet to grasp on any one solution. There's a lot of factors that come into play. I mean, how much does this frontal boundary begin to interact with this system, right? Does any drier air try and nudge back in on the southwest side? But ultimately, what are the steering currents here as we get into early November? The farther back in time that we start to see the models push this into early November, the complete atmospheric profile here in the Caribbean and the Western Atlantic changes a bit, right? So farther in time that you go, there are other factors that will come into play. But you can see on this wind profile here, as I zoom in, and just look right over, and I'll just zoom in a little bit more here. Look right over Haiti and the Dominican Republic here, Santo Domingo, Lacai. It's trying to wrap up the storm right over the island. So you have a broad area of extremely strong winds, but you just don't have the core. Look on the north side, right? Turks and Caicos, southeast Bahamas, you get sustained winds of 35, 40 miles an hour. Northern sides of Jamaica, southeast Cuba, you have 35, 40 mile an hour winds. South of the Dominican Republic, you have 35, 40 mile an hour winds, but it's never going to produce a strong low-level center if it really is trying to wrap up right over the Dominican Republic and Haiti. If we show you the ensemble members, right? So here's where the deterministic is right here. Look, as we get into late Thursday, Friday, that's the first signs of the GFS picking up on this. More come into play early on Saturday through the weekend and then into Monday. And you will see that on the ensemble members, we are mainly west of there. The main one is back over Jamaica early on Monday afternoon. Okay, couple a little bit farther to the south. Yes, the GFS does have a few ensembles trying to develop a tropical system along that frontal boundary, mainly developing it north of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the Lesser Antilles, and then lifting it north and away. So right now, I'm not concerned about a tropical storm slamming back from the north into those islands, but man, could it just continue to produce a ton of rainfall here ultimately. But you can see that on the GFS ensemble, we have a much farther west solution on some of those. The European model is even farther west. This is a kind of a snapshot, if you will, early on Tuesday. And again, these numbers that you see are going to be your low-level centers, okay? on these ensembles, and there's a lot of them producing a tropical storm in the Southwest Caribbean. Let's be clear, this is exactly where this disturbance is this Tuesday. So there is a potential over a 7-day time frame that this thing just doesn't budge, all right? May not move much at all, might just be staying in the Southwest Caribbean. But a lot more here are into play rather than back over Hispaniola. Look at the cluster much farther away, right? I'm going to show you the loop coming up, so you'll see exactly where these go, but just that snapshot. And we have a few that, again, try and develop a weaker storm along this stalled out boundary. Just a lot of lift in the atmosphere, some close to the Turks or the Caicos. And again, the general solution would be, even if it develops in this area, it's trying to move up to the north and into the open waters of the Western Atlantic. But again, still could be a heavy rainmaker. So on the European model ensemble members now, let's let those run. Again, they're even about 24 hours behind the GFS. But as we get into late Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then this is going to be late on Tuesday, here is your cluster. Much farther west than that outlier GFS deterministic. Some are closer to Haiti, but we have much more closer to Jamaica and then even into the Western Caribbean, even as far west as the Belize, Yucatan coastline. It's still a big spread, but overall it's farther west. Not a lot in the way of development here with that stalled out boundary, but we could see 1 or 2 ensemble members producing a storm again, mainly north of the islands and trying to lift it to the north. That's the secondary one I'll be monitoring. But obviously the one that's being highlighted by the Hurricane Center is this puppy right here. But again, you know, we're still looking at no development for at least 4 days, and probably in that 5 to 6, 7 day time frame, we begin to pick it up. So the bottom line is, again, I wish we could start focusing more in on certain locations and time frame, but this is just not how this particular storm looks like it's going to be played out. So we still need to pay attention in a very broad area. You live in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, Cuba and Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Central America. You still need to be paying very close attention to this. Again, I'll break it down for you every day here at Meteo Mundo. You don't need to make any preparations as of now. Once we start to see something wrap up and we get a little bit better idea where it's headed, we can start to narrow that concentration. But any of these areas need to pay attention to this. And again, it may not just be the actual storm coming through. It could be the flooding rains in a wide area. This might help to promote as well. It's obviously kicking up the surf and sea conditions. I mean, these gale warnings are nasty. We're going to have some rough weather all the way down into the northern coastlines of Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. Fresher winds will also be picking back up over the Caribbean. And obviously, as this tries to wrap up for boaters here, that's going to be another area of enhanced sea conditions. It just depends on where it goes. Again, on the GFS deterministic, which this is based off of, it kind of drifts back up to the north and to the east, but even areas off towards the west here in the Western Caribbean need to be paying very vigilant attention to that. Again, rainfall totals could be quite excessive. European models over the next 7 days. A huge area of extremely heavy rainfall. I'll take myself off camera. Again, you'll notice if we look up to Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and the Virgin Islands, 4, 6, 8 inches of rain, 100 to 200 millimeters, even portions of the northern Leeward Islands as well. That could include eastern Cuba and the Turks, the Caicos. Certainly Jamaica could be in for some excessive rainfall as well. And then you get back over towards the Cayman Islands, and again, the Caribbean coastline of Quintana Roo, all of Central America. Look at this, we could have some 10, 12 inches of rain here in portions of Costa Rica and Panama. That's 250 to 300 millimeters in just the next 7 days. You live in that part of the world, let me know. Still some decent rainfall totals expected through most of the Lesser Antilles as well. Really, guys, when we look at this, it's only areas north of that boundary that aren't going to have a lot of rain. And that would be the Bahamas and portions of Cuba. And guess what they're going to get? They're going to get a lot of wind as well. This is what it looks like on the GFS model just over the next 5 days. So we're comparing the GFS and the European. If I go into the GFS model here, and again, this is just over 5 days. Look what we have on the GFS. St. Croix, almost 10 inches of rain. Towards Vieques, 9 inches. Culebra, 8. Again, we don't, we can average this out a little bit. I can put these on here just like this, right? So we get an idea. But this is my concern. I know we got to talk about this storm, guys, but the heavy rainfall that could fall in some of these areas, right? Now, again, I'm not going to buy that there's that much rain in the Virgin Islands and then we have just 3.5 there, and Ponce would only have about 2. Certainly the northern sides of the islands would probably favor some of the heavier rain. Same situation here in the Dominican Republic. I mean, again, I don't know if we're going to have 14 inches of rain just east of Santiago de los Caballeros, and they're going to have 7, and Puerto Plata's going to have 8. But you get the idea that over the next 5 days, we have to really keep a vigilant eye on some of the heavier rainfall that could fall here, right? Is there a little bit of a rain shadow effect for some of the higher terrain for Haiti? It could be that way. But still, you know, we could have several inches of rain in portions of Haiti as well. Eastern Cuba, here's Jamaica. Again, northeast side of the island might favor a little bit heavier rainfall there, but still expecting pockets of heavier rain. I think the GFS is a little bit too underdone on the western side and maybe a little bit too overdone on the eastern side, but let's say easily 2 to 4 inches here overall, okay? And again, north of this, drier for the Bahamas. We get back down towards the Lesser Antilles, and again, the far northern side of the Lesser Antilles, again, Anguilla, and St. Martin, and St. Bart's, and Saba, and St. Kitts and Nevis, and Barbuda and Antigua, all probably in that zone for several inches of rain, and it will be area dependent. That possibility will be there, and then drier air and less rain all the way back down towards Trinidad and Tobago. And into portions of Central America, there's your high rainfall totals for portions of Panama and Costa Rica, and on the extreme eastern coastlines, higher rainfall totals there. Remember, the GFS takes this storm east, so there's not going to be as much rain here as what the European model is showing. But that being said, we could still have, you know, Tulum, Cozumel, 5 inches of rain, San Pedro, Belize City, maybe a few. These are areas that don't need a lot more rain, but clearly you can see that the GFS model is pulling the storm this way and then combines it with all of this. This is still just through what? Like early Sunday morning, right? 2 a.m. Let me blow your mind here real quick. I think we did this in yesterday's video as well, but if I just take this out, let's see here. If I just take this out a few more days, look at all that. Now you're getting into double-digit rainfall totals in all of these areas in the yellows and greens, because here comes the tropical system. Huge amounts of rain here. So again, regardless of actually seeing a tropical storm develop, the rainfall is a big concern of mine. Back over real quickly to the model here. Just want to loop this up and talk about areas that weren't going to be directly impacted. Again, we are going to have more tropical moisture coming back into the Lesser Antilles. If you get to Dominica and Martinique and St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad, Tobago, south, it's just not going to be as concentrated, right? With this system pulling up to the north, we'll still pick up some south winds and it will start to get wet again, but the highest concentration of heavier rain will be Guadeloupe north, but especially for St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat north as well. And again, based on the GFS, now we just see all of this moisture coming back in, running into this boundary, and just look at all the green on the map here, guys, right? A little bit drier for Western Cuba, drier for the Bahamas. And again, based off the GFS, apologize for that, based off the GFS, although it's going to be wet in Central America, it won't be wet farther north compared to the European model, which pulls the system farther off towards the west. So for the Western Caribbean, it will be much dependent on what happens with the tropical system. Regardless of where this tropical system moves in this part of the Caribbean, it's going to stay wet thanks to that frontal boundary. Friends, I appreciate you guys. Follow us across all social media. We're on Instagram, My Meteo Mundo, TikTok, Meteo Mundo, X at Meteo Mundo, and we have a Facebook page. It's also, hey, guess what? My Meteo Mundo. If you would like to send me a picture or video, that is mymeteomundo@gmail.com. You have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. And while you're down there, again, thank you for liking and subscribing. I'll have all the newest information on Disturbance. We'll see if anything comes into more clarity for tomorrow. We'll talk about the heavy rain, the flooding conditions expected. We'll break down all the newest details for that tomorrow as well. Until then, friends, you have a great one, and I'll see you soon right here at Meteo Mundo.